There comes a time in life when you've had enough. Not because you're weak, not because you're bitter, but because you finally realize your worth. You've poured your heart into people who only gave you fragments. You stood in silence while others walked all over your dignity. And somewhere deep inside your soul whispered, you deserve better. Let me tell you something, disrespect doesn't always show up as loud insults. Sometimes it hides in people who ignore your value, who take your kindness for granted, who smile in your face and diminish your light when you're not looking. But here's the truth. The way people treat you is a reflection of what you allow. And when you finally stand up, not with hate, not with rage, but with unshakable self-respect, something shifts. Your energy changes. Your presence speaks louder than your words ever could. You no longer beg to be seen because your presence demands it. You stop explaining yourself because your standards do the talking. If you've ever felt invisible, unappreciated, or disrespected, this moment right here is where that ends. This is the beginning of the version of you that no one ever dares to disrespect again. There's something sacred about knowing where you end and where someone else begins. But too often we let people blur those lines. We say yes when our soul is screaming no. We stay quiet when our heart is begging us to speak. And we keep letting people step over our peace, thinking that's what love or loyalty looks like. Let me tell you something. Love without boundaries is self-destruction in disguise. When you don't teach people how to treat you, they will treat you however they feel. And they won't even know they're doing wrong because you never stopped them. You never said this is not okay. You never looked them in the eye and declared, you don't get to handle me like that. Boundaries are not mean. They are not rude. They are necessary. They are how we protect our spirit, our energy, our purpose. And when you start to draw those lines, you may lose some people, but you'll find your freedom. You may get misunderstood, but you'll gain your peace. And in the end, peace will always be worth more than approval. You don't need to shout to make a boundary. You don't need to justify it or explain it away with trembling lips. A boundary can be as simple as not answering that call, not opening that door, not responding to that message. A boundary can be silence, distance, a sacred pause where you choose yourself first. People will try to tell you you've changed. They'll say you're cold, heartless, distant. But don't get it twisted. You're not being cruel. You're being clear. You're no longer available for disrespect disguised as love. You're no longer entertaining connections that drain you instead of build you. And when you stop overextending yourself for those who never meet you halfway, you begin to realize just how powerful your no really is. That one word, that no is a full sentence. It's a wall when you need protection. It's a mirror that reflects your worth. And it's the beginning of a new chapter where you stop breaking yourself to keep others whole. There was a time when you thought being kind meant saying yes all the time. You were taught to give, to serve, to be available, even when it hurt. But kindness without boundaries leads to resentment, it leads to burnout, it leads to a version of you that's tired all the time, wondering why no one seems to care about your needs. The truth is, people are not mind readers. They will keep taking until you say enough. And when you finally draw that line, you're not being selfish. You're being wise. You're choosing to show up for yourself the way you've shown up for everyone else. That's not betrayal, that's healing. That's balance, that's growth. And when you do that, you'll begin to feel something you haven't felt in a long time, wholeness. You'll stop trying to earn love through sacrifice. You'll stop trying to buy peace by making yourself small. You'll start walking like you know who you are. And that kind of walk shifts the atmosphere. You can love someone deeply and still say no more. You can forgive someone and still create space. You can wish someone well and still close the door behind them. Boundaries don't mean you're bitter. They mean you're brave enough to choose yourself. Every time you draw a line, you tell the world, I know what I'm worth. And even if they don't get it, even if they walk away, let them. Because the people who truly love you, the ones who honor you, they won't see your boundaries as rejection. They'll see them as protection. They'll know that you're not pushing them away, you're preserving your peace. They'll adjust or they'll exit. Either way you win, either way your soul breathes easier. Because now, finally, you're standing in your power. And when you do that, life starts to look different. You stop chasing love. You stop begging for respect. You stop proving your value because your boundaries already say it for you. Sometimes the hardest people to set boundaries with are the ones closest to you. Family, friends, people you've known for years. You don't want to hurt them. You don't want to feel guilty. But listen, proximity doesn't give someone permission to damage you. Just because they've known you forever doesn't mean they get a lifetime pass to ignore your needs. Just because they're blood doesn't mean they get to cross your emotional limits without consequence. Boundaries are not just for strangers. They're for anyone who threatens your peace, your purpose, your mental health. And when you finally look those people in the eye and say, I love you, but I love me too, something powerful happens. You stop shrinking to keep the family happy. You stop betraying yourself to keep the friendship alive. And that's where your healing begins. That's when you begin building a life where your spirit doesn't feel suffocated. You were not born to be everyone's savior. You were not created to be constantly accessible. Your soul needs rest. Your mind needs quiet. Your heart needs truth. And boundaries give you all of that. When you start saying no without explaining, when you start turning off your phone without guilt, when you start canceling plans because you need solitude, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's spiritual maturity. That's self-care on a soul level. And yes, some people won't understand, but they don't need to. The only person who needs to understand your boundaries is you, because no one else walks in your shoes. No one else carries your burdens. And if you don't guard your peace, no one else will. So protect it like it's sacred, because it is. Protect your time, your space, your emotional energy like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. When you stop apologizing for your boundaries, you begin to attract people who respect them. When you stand firm in what you need, you stop entertaining people who only take. You stop explaining your value to people who never had the eyes to see it. You become a filter, not a sponge. You no longer absorb everyone's problems, everyone's chaos, everyone's opinions. You filter what serves you and you let the rest go. You stop being a victim of your own compassion. You stop sacrificing your well-being for people who never show up for you. And in that moment, when you finally draw that line in the sand and say, this is where I stand, that's when people begin to treat you differently. Not because they changed, but because you did. You decided your energy was too precious to be wasted on anything less than what aligns with your purpose. And that decision changes everything. I know it's not easy. I know you've been taught that being nice means being available. That love means sacrifice. That loyalty means tolerating pain. But let me challenge that. Real love doesn't require you to abandon yourself. Real loyalty doesn't mean enduring abuse. And kindness should never come at the cost of your own soul. When you start setting boundaries, it might feel uncomfortable. You might second guess yourself, but discomfort is part of growth. Boundaries stretch your soul into a new kind of strength, a quiet strength, a graceful power. And when you lean into that, you stop fearing people's reactions. You stop needing permission to protect yourself. You give yourself the grace to grow without guilt. And with every boundary you set, your life becomes more aligned, more peaceful, more powerful. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they're used to having it. Read that again. Your growth may offend people who benefited from your silence. Your boundaries may frustrate people who were used to crossing them. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them adjust. Or let them leave. You're not living for applause anymore. You're living for peace. You're building a life that supports your soul, that honors your purpose, that reflects the love you so freely give to others. But now, finally, you're giving it to yourself. And when that love becomes the foundation of your life, you don't chase, you don't beg, you don't shrink. You rise, you walk in rooms like you belong there. You speak with clarity, you rest without guilt, and you begin to experience a freedom that can't be bought, only claimed. One boundary at a time. So if you feel tired, if you feel disrespected, overlooked, taken for granted, don't wait for someone else to change. Don't hope they'll magically treat you better. Don't lose sleep waiting for an apology that may never come. Stand up, not with anger, not with fear, but with sacred authority, with quiet courage, with the kind of presence that says, I matter too, because you do. And once you start showing up like you matter, the whole world starts to notice. Not everyone will like the new you, but the ones who respect you, they'll rise with you. And those who don't, Let them fall behind. You're not carrying guilt anymore. You're not carrying disrespect anymore. You're not carrying everyone else's baggage at the cost of your own peace. You're walking light. You're walking free. You've drawn the line. And from this moment on, no one will ever disrespect you again. There comes a moment in your life when you have to realize that not everyone deserves access to your voice. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your truth. You spend so much time trying to explain yourself, trying to be understood, trying to make people see the heart behind your words, the pain behind your silence, the fire behind your choices. But let me tell you something. If someone is committed to misunderstanding you, no amount of explaining will ever change their mind. You keep showing up to conversations where your soul is not safe. You keep sharing your perspective with people who are only listening to respond, not to understand. And in doing so, you give away your peace, one unnecessary explanation at a time. But today, you need to stop. Stop over-explaining your boundaries. Stop defending your dreams. Stop justifying your healing. Because when someone is truly for you, they won't need 100 words to honor your no. They won't need a detailed essay to validate your growth. They'll feel your energy, they'll see your intention, and they'll respect your decision. You don't owe your clarity to people who profit from your confusion. You don't owe your truth to people who mock it. You don't owe your peace to people who stir chaos every time you speak your mind. There is a freedom that comes when you stop trying to make the blind see. When you stop explaining your light to people who are comfortable in the dark. Because some people don't want to hear you. They want to drain you. They want to twist your words, question your motives, exhaust your soul. And they do it not because they're confused, but because control is more comfortable than respect. The moment you stop trying to win their approval, the moment you stop bending your voice just to avoid their judgment, that's the moment you start walking in your power. That's the moment your energy shifts. That's when they notice you're not playing the game anymore. You're not explaining, you're not defending, you're not shrinking, you're just walking in truth, and that silence is louder than any argument you could ever make. You've tried. God knows you've tried. You've had the talks, you've written the texts. You've had the sit-downs and the emotional breakdowns. You've begged to be understood. You've cried in private, hoping someone would finally say, I get it. I see you. But they didn't. And it's not because your words weren't clear. It's because their hearts were closed. Their ears weren't blocked. They were biased. And that's the difference. See, when someone has already made up their mind about you, your truth becomes irrelevant. They don't hear what you're saying, they hear what confirms their narrative. And no matter how gently or passionately you try to explain yourself, it all sounds like noise to someone who isn't listening with love. So why keep wasting your breath? Why keep bleeding in front of people who pretend they can't see the wounds? Stop explaining yourself, not because you're bitter, but because you've finally chosen peace over performance. Let them think what they want to think. Let them build their story. Let them talk behind your back. Their opinion of you is not your responsibility. Their confusion is not your burden. You were not put on this earth to be understood by everyone. You were placed here to walk your purpose. And sometimes that walk looks strange to those still stuck in survival. You don't need to slow your pace just to make others comfortable. You don't need to dim your light so their shadows can rest. When you stop explaining yourself, you take back your time. You reclaim your dignity. You protect your energy. And guess what? You begin to attract the kind of people who don't need paragraphs to understand your silence, who don't need proof to respect your decisions, who love you without needing a presentation. That's when you know you're in alignment. Not because everyone claps, but because your spirit feels at home in its own truth. Some people ask questions not to understand, but to judge. They poke holes in your reasoning, not because they care, but because they want to tear you down. They act confused to keep you explaining, to keep you doubting, to keep you spinning. And the more you explain, the more they twist. It becomes a cycle, a trap. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your life trying to earn understanding from people who are emotionally unavailable, spiritually deaf, or just plain uninterested in your growth. Listen, real ones won't need you to defend your evolution. They'll see it, they'll respect it. And even if they don't fully understand it, they won't stand in its way. So here's the truth. You don't need to explain why you've changed. Growth is its own explanation. Peace is its own justification. And your peace is louder than their gossip, their doubts, their assumptions. Stop giving people front row seats to a show they came to criticize. You've got a calling, you've got a mission, you've got a story that's still being written. And you don't need to pause it every time someone says, I don't get it. Some people weren't meant to get it. Some people are not part of your next chapter. Stop trying to carry old characters into a new season. If they wanted to understand, they would. If they valued the relationship, they'd ask to learn, not argue. And if they truly saw you, they wouldn't need an explanation. They recognize the journey. So let go. Let go of the need to be understood. Let go of the need to fix every misunderstanding. You can be misunderstood and still be righteous. You can be misjudged and still be walking in purpose. Don't let their confusion interrupt your clarity. Don't let their silence make you second guess your voice. Walk boldly, walk unapologetically, because when God gives you peace about a decision, it doesn't matter who doesn't get it. Sometimes we explain ourselves because deep down we still want their validation. We still want to be liked. We still want to be seen as good, right? Lovable. But freedom starts the day you stop needing permission to be who you are. You start showing up not for applause, but for alignment. You start saying no without needing to write a book about it. You start walking away without giving a detailed report. And when someone asks, why didn't you call back or why didn't you stay? You simply say, because I chose me. And that's it. That's the whole story. You're no longer performing. You're no longer proving. You're no longer explaining. You are living. Living in a way that honors your truth, respects your intuition, and protects your spirit. And that kind of living, that's rare. That's powerful. That's divine. You are not here to be everyone's lesson. You are not here to unpack your pain for every curious stranger. Your journey is sacred. Your healing is private, and your peace is precious. Share it with those who nurture it. Offer it to those who earn it. But don't waste it trying to prove something to people who've already decided who you are. You're not their opinion. You're not their rumor. You're not their projection. You are light. You are purpose. You are strength. And if they can't see that, let them sit in their own blindness. Your job is not to drag them into the light. Your job is to shine regardless. And when you shine, the ones who are meant for you, they'll come. Not because you explained yourself, but because your light drew them. That's the difference between connection and confusion. Connection feels like peace. Confusion feels like exhaustion. Choose peace. Every time. In this life, you will outgrow people. You will outgrow places. You will outgrow conversations. And that's okay. You don't have to explain your distance. You don't have to explain your silence. Growth will often look like isolation before it looks like elevation. But in that quiet space, you hear your own voice again. You remember what it feels like to be whole without constant justification. That's where your real power is. Not in defending yourself, but in defining yourself. You are not a prisoner of anyone's misunderstanding. You are not stuck trying to fix what they refuse to see. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. But don't let them hold your peace hostage. Don't let them keep you in emotional debt, constantly paying interest and explanations. Your spirit doesn't owe them anything. So from this day forward, walk in truth without apology. Speak with conviction. Act with clarity. And when you are not understood, smile anyway. When you are misjudged, breathe deeper. When you are questioned, choose peace over proving. Because the loudest truth is not in your words, it's in your energy, it's in your decisions, it's in your silence. You've explained enough, now it's time to live. There's a power in silence that people don't talk about. A force so strong, so unshakable, it doesn't need volume to be heard. It doesn't need attention to be felt. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is not retreat. Silence is strategy. When the world is loud and full of noise, full of opinions and egos and endless debates, the one who knows how to be still becomes the most powerful person in the room, because silence is not the absence of power, it's the presence of control. Silence says, I don't owe you my reaction. Silence says, I'm not giving you access to disrupt my peace. And when you learn how to sit with your own silence, when you learn to be still in a world that wants you reactive and desperate for validation, you win. Every time. People will try to bait you. They'll push your buttons, try to get you to defend yourself, try to get a rise out of you because they feed off your response. And the moment you give it to them, they win. The moment you start explaining, arguing, proving, you've handed them your power. But when you stay quiet, not out of fear, but out of discipline, you're making a declaration. I don't have time to entertain confusion. I'm focused. Let your silence speak where your words are no longer respected. Let your calm be your comeback. Let your distance be your answer. Because silence is the language of emotional maturity. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It just walks away with dignity, with grace, and with strength. You don't need to clap back at every insult. You don't need to correct every rumor. You don't need to engage in every drama. Because when you truly own your silence, you start to realize you don't need to win arguments. You just need to win your peace. There's a reason kings sit still while the crowd roars. There's a reason generals don't shout on the battlefield. Power doesn't always come with noise, it comes with presence. And your silence, when aligned with self-respect, becomes louder than any scream, more disruptive than any insult, and more powerful than any lie spoken against you. Sometimes your silence will offend people. They'll say, you changed. They'll say, you're distant. You think you're better. But let them talk, because silence isn't about ego. Silence is about energy, and not everyone deserves yours. When you respond to everything, you're teaching the world that your peace is for sale. But when you respond to almost nothing, you teach the world that your peace is protected. And make no mistake, your silence is not empty. It's full of discernment, full of boundaries, full of wisdom. When you choose to be silent, you are not giving up. You are rising above. And let me tell you something. The loudest people in the room are usually the most insecure. Real power doesn't broadcast itself. Real confidence doesn't need a mic. And real healing doesn't seek applause. When you own your silence, you stop performing. You stop explaining. You stop reacting, and instead you begin observing. You begin moving with purpose. You begin moving with purpose. You begin making choices from clarity, not chaos. And that's when your life begins to elevate, not because others finally understood you, but because you finally understood yourself. You realize that peace is not something you find outside of you. It's something you protect inside of you. You know what's louder than shouting? Consistency. You know what's louder than defending yourself? Success. You know what's louder than begging to be understood? Walking in your calling. People don't forget silence. They don't forget how you didn't argue, how you didn't explain, how you just got better. And that's what silence does. It builds mystery. It builds respect. It builds strength. They'll ask, what happened to them? And the answer is simple. You stop being accessible to chaos. You stopped auditioning for people who don't know how to appreciate you. You stopped giving explanations for your evolution. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them sit in the echo of your absence. You are not obligated to water dead plants just because they once bloomed. Some things are better left in silence. Some chapters are better closed without commentary. Some goodbyes are more powerful unspoken. Own that. Own the strength in silence. Own the confidence in peace. Own the knowing that says, I don't need to be loud to be heard. I don't need to be seen to be valuable. I don't need to explain to be right. You are not here to prove anything. You are here to grow, to heal, to protect your light. And silence, that's the soil where your soul begins to breathe again. The most dangerous person is not the one who shouts. It's the one who listens deeply. The one who sees everything and says nothing. The one who knows the power of restraint. The one who chooses peace over petty. That's you. That's the version of you that rises when you stop arguing, when you stop chasing, when you stop needing everyone to get it. And that's the version of you that's going to change your life. You've explained enough. You've defended enough. You've exhausted yourself trying to be heard. Now it's time to own your silence. Walk in it, live in it, and let the noise fall away. Because at the end of the day, your silence is your freedom. Your silence is your revolution. And your silence when it comes from a place of truth, is louder than any words ever could be. Respect yourself so loudly that others have no choice but to follow. Walk into every room with the kind of energy that speaks before you do. Carry yourself with the confidence of someone who knows their worth and refuses to negotiate it. When you respect yourself, you set the tone. You teach people how to treat you without saying a single word. It's in the way you stand tall, the way you say no without guilt, the way you choose yourself over pleasing others. Respect isn't arrogance, it's alignment. It's knowing who you are, what you bring to the table, and not allowing anyone to make you feel small for it. It's turning down opportunities that require you to shrink. It's not replying to disrespect with desperation. It's not chasing people to see your value. Self-respect is when your silence becomes louder than your excuses. When you stop explaining your standards and start embodying them, because the world mirrors how you treat yourself. People will only go as far as you allow. They will only talk to you the way you let them. And when you hold yourself high, when you stop accepting crumbs, the game changes. Respect is not something you demand. It's something you command by how you carry yourself. There is a shift that happens the moment you start respecting yourself fully. It's not loud. It's not announced. It's felt. You start walking differently, speaking differently, making decisions from a place of clarity rather than craving. When you respect yourself, you stop tolerating what used to drain you. You don't argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't beg for love that needs convincing. You don't entertain energies that threaten your peace. Because now you know you are not desperate. You are not replaceable. You are not someone who will lower their standards just to be accepted. That shift makes people pay attention. They may not say it out loud, but they notice. They feel it when you enter the room. They sense it when you say no without needing to explain. They see it in your eyes. This fire, this resolve, this unshakable self-honor. And you know what? Some will be uncomfortable. Some will pull away. Let them. Because the ones who truly see you, the ones meant for you, they won't run from your self-respect. They'll rise to it. Self-respect will cost you comfort. It will cost you some friendships, relationships, and situations that once felt familiar. Because when you elevate your self-worth, you automatically filter your environment. Suddenly, the things you used to chase now feel beneath you. The conversations you used to tolerate now feel draining. The spaces you used to shrink yourself in become too small for your growth. And it's not pride, it's progress. It's understanding that your value doesn't decrease because others can't see it. It's learning that you don't need to stay where your presence is tolerated but not valued. You start prioritizing peace over popularity, boundaries over burnout, alignment over attention. And that's when people either level up or leave. Let them. Because every time you choose yourself, you're teaching the world that your spirit is sacred, that your time is limited, that your energy is expensive. And when you carry yourself with that awareness, you don't need to chase respect, it finds you. There comes a point in your life where you stop explaining your worth to people who benefit from you doubting it. You stop defending your value to those who only show up to drain it. You realize that some people don't disrespect you because of who you are. They do it because they know you haven't owned who you are yet. But that ends the moment you decide enough of bending to be liked, enough of proving yourself to people who don't even know how to love themselves, enough of hoping they'll see your heart when they only look for flaws. When you respect yourself, you no longer settle for almost loved, almost respected, almost valued. You rise above confusion, you choose clarity. And even when your voice shakes, even when it's uncomfortable, you choose to stand tall. Because no one is coming to save you from the disrespect you allow. No one is going to hand you dignity. You have to claim it. And once you do, you never unlearn it. There is something magnetic about a person who knows their worth and lives like it. They don't need to prove it. They don't need to post it. They just walk in it. Their energy says, I belong here. Not out of arrogance, but out of certainty. When you respect yourself, you don't beg to be chosen. You don't shrink to be liked. You don't tolerate behavior that leaves your soul exhausted. Because you finally realize you are the prize, not in a cliche way, but in a real, grounded way. You bring value, you bring light, you bring presence. And you are not for everyone. That's the point. You're not here to be universally accepted. You're here to be divinely aligned. And that means letting go of what doesn't honor you, walking away from what doesn't grow you, saying goodbye to people who only show up when it's convenient for them. Respecting yourself means protecting yourself, not just from others, but from the version of you that kept settling just to feel seen. Sometimes respecting yourself means walking away even when it hurts. It means leaving behind what feels familiar because you know you deserve better. It's not always bold, it's often quiet. You sit in silence, holding your own hand, choosing healing over history, choosing growth over guilt. It's not easy, it's not glamorous, but it's necessary. Because the longer you stay in places that don't value you, the more you teach yourself to accept less. And the moment you say, I deserve more, you light a fire inside of you that changes everything. You start attracting people who don't just see your worth, they reflect it. You stop explaining your standards, they feel them. You begin to walk through life with a level of calm that says, I'm not here to convince, I'm here to be. And that shift, that's power. That's respect in motion. That's when people begin to treat you like someone who cannot be played with. When you respect yourself deeply, you stop needing others to validate your existence. You stop needing permission to be great. You stop waiting for applause to take up space. Because self-respect teaches you that you are already enough. You are already whole. You don't need to perform for approval. You don't need to sacrifice your values to be accepted. You walk in truth, even if it makes you stand alone. You honor your needs, even if others don't understand them. And the irony is, the moment you stop needing validation is the moment you start receiving it. Not from everyone, but from the right ones. The ones who recognize your soul without needing subtitles. The ones who rise to your level without pulling you down. When you respect yourself, you start attracting relationships rooted in mutual honor, not codependency. And suddenly your circle gets smaller, but stronger. You no longer fear being alone because your own company has become enough. You can always tell who respects themselves by the way they move. They don't stay in toxic environments. They don't entertain drama. They don't compromise their integrity for temporary gains. They are not arrogant, but they are unapologetic. They know what they will and won't tolerate. They don't confuse love with pain. They don't confuse loyalty with self-sacrifice. They show up with presence, speak with purpose, and walk with power. Because self-respect creates clarity. You know what you want, you know what you deserve, and you're not afraid to wait for it. You're not afraid to walk away for it. You're not afraid to stand alone for it. That's what makes you unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because your standards get higher. Your energy becomes more focused, and your life begins to mirror the love you've finally given to yourself. The truth is, when you start respecting yourself, you'll outgrow a lot. You'll outgrow conversations that feel empty, relationships that lack depth, environments that don't nourish your spirit. And that can feel lonely, that can feel confusing, but it's also liberation. Because now you're no longer stuck. You're no longer trying to fit where you've outgrown. You're no longer dimming your light to make others comfortable. You're expanding, you're evolving. And yes, not everyone will understand, not everyone will clap, but respect isn't about approval. It's about alignment. It's about waking up and looking in the mirror with pride, knowing you didn't abandon yourself to be accepted, knowing you didn't settle when you deserved more. That kind of self-respect, it's rare. It's powerful, and it's yours. At the end of the day, self-respect is a lifelong commitment. It's choosing yourself again and again, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. It's holding your own heart with tenderness and your boundaries with strength. It's saying, I matter, not just with words, but with actions. It's living a life that reflects your values, not your fears. And when you respect yourself that loudly, that fully, the world can't ignore it. People adjust. They notice. They either rise to meet you or fall away. And you keep rising. You keep walking. You keep showing up as someone who knows they were never meant to live quietly. Because when you carry yourself with respect, The world follows your lead, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Remove access, not love. That's the lesson most people never learn until they've been drained dry. It's possible to love someone deeply and still recognize that they're not good for your peace, that they don't belong in the front row of your life anymore. And that doesn't mean you stop loving them. It means you stop giving them the same level of access they once had. You protect your space like it's sacred, because it is. You understand that love isn't always about staying. Sometimes the strongest form of love is creating space. Sometimes the purest love is quiet and distant. It says, I still care about you, but not at the expense of my mental and emotional well-being. That's what real maturity is. Knowing when to step back, not because you're cold-hearted, but because you finally learned to value your peace more than someone else's comfort. You've grown out of overextending yourself just to be enough for people who refuse to meet you halfway. You've realized that giving too much access to the wrong energy ruins your clarity, steals your joy, and leaves you questioning your worth. So now, you move with wisdom, with grace, with boundaries that say, I love you, but I love me too. There's power in not reacting, in not explaining, in not chasing. When you remove access instead of love, you choose peace without needing revenge or drama. You no longer feel obligated to answer every message, fix every misunderstanding, or show up just because someone feels entitled to your energy. You stop operating from guilt and start moving from groundedness. Because you've learned that just because someone was once close to you doesn't mean they still deserve that closeness. People change, seasons shift, and not everyone is meant to stay. Removing access is how you protect yourself from being emotionally manipulated or drained by someone who only shows up when they need something. It's how you protect your light from those who don't value it. You begin to understand that silence is a strategy, not a weakness. That distance is clarity, not bitterness. And that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, they're gates to decide who's allowed in. The moment you realize your peace is priceless is the moment you stop negotiating it for someone who brings nothing but chaos. So yes, you still love them, but you love them from a distance. Because love without peace isn't worth sacrificing your sanity. Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who damage your peace the deepest. And that's what makes removing access so hard. You tell yourself that maybe they'll change, maybe they'll understand, maybe they didn't mean it. You replay the good memories, trying to justify the current pain. But eventually you reach a breaking point, a quiet moment of clarity where you realize you don't have to hate them to step away. You don't have to be angry to let go. You just have to be honest with yourself about how much it's costing you, about how drained you feel, about how small you've had to shrink to keep the connection alive. And that's when you make the decision to protect your peace at all costs. You remove access, not love, because you still care. You still wish them well, but you're not going to sacrifice your growth to keep them close. You're not going to water yourself down to avoid confrontation. You're not going to lose yourself in the name of loyalty. This isn't about being heartless. It's about being whole. And the only way to be whole is to stop giving yourself away in pieces to people who never pour back. Protecting your peace doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're clear. It means you've seen what happens when you let people trample your energy, manipulate your kindness, or take advantage of your empathy. You've been the one who always showed up, always made excuses, always gave second, third, and 10th chances. And you've paid the price for it. You've lost sleep, confidence, and trust in yourself. So now you've learned peace isn't passive, it's powerful, it's intentional. It's choosing to stop the cycle before it consumes you. You no longer feel guilty for distancing yourself from people who consistently disrespect your boundaries. You no longer force connections that leave you emotionally empty. You understand that your energy is sacred and not everyone should have access to it. So yes, you still love them, but now from a place that doesn't cost your well-being. You no longer try to fix what's repeatedly broken. You no longer let people guilt you into staying small, because you've learned that real love doesn't violate your peace. And if it does, it's not love, it's attachment, it's habit, it's fear. And you're done letting those things lead you. The moment you stop over-explaining yourself is the moment you step into your power. You don't need to justify why you're pulling away from someone who repeatedly brings chaos into your life. You don't need to argue, debate, or convince them of the pain they've caused. If they didn't see it when you were breaking yourself trying to hold things together, they won't understand it now. That's why removing access is more effective than reacting. It speaks louder. It sets a firm boundary. It says, I'm done sacrificing my peace for someone who doesn't even notice. And that doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you finally started caring about yourself more. You've stopped betraying yourself for people who wouldn't think twice about leaving you drained. You've stopped saying yes out of fear of being seen as difficult or disloyal. You've stopped making room for people who only show up when it benefits them. This is your season of peace, of clarity, of boundaries that don't bend under pressure. And you've earned it through pain, through silence, through every time you kept giving and got nothing in return. Now you protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. There's a version of you that exists on the other side of constant people pleasing, a version that doesn't second guess their decisions, that doesn't shrink to avoid confrontation, that doesn't keep toxic people close just to avoid being alone. That version of you isn't angry or bitter. They're just done. Done explaining, justifying, and begging for the bare minimum. When you remove access instead of love, you acknowledge that love is not the issue, proximity is. Some people can only love you from afar. Some people only function in your life when there's distance between their chaos and your calm. And that's okay. It's not cruel to protect your peace. It's necessary, because every time you sacrifice your mental well-being for someone else's comfort, you lose a piece of yourself. You teach your soul that it doesn't matter. But now you're rewriting that story. You're showing up for yourself first. You're setting boundaries that are non-negotiable. You're learning that being available to everyone means being available to no one, not even yourself. So you make the hard choice. You remove access. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving you. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. Some people belong in the balcony. Others don't even deserve a ticket. That realization is painful, but liberating, because for so long you gave full access to people who didn't respect the privilege, people who drained your joy, disrupted your peace, and left you feeling like you were too much or not enough. But now you move differently. You no longer allow inconsistency to be your standard. You no longer confuse love with proximity. You've grown into a person who values solitude over stressful company, who understands that protecting your peace might mean disappointing others, but never yourself. You remove access not to punish, but to preserve. Because peace doesn't scream, it simply exits. It doesn't need to justify its presence. It just chooses itself and moves forward. And in doing so, you teach others that your time, energy, and presence are not cheap, that they must be earned, that you are no longer available for relationships that cost you your calm. You're not bitter, you're not petty, you're just aware now. Aware of how sacred your inner world is. And you'll do whatever it takes to protect it, even if it means loving people from a distance. One of the greatest acts of self-love is choosing peace over connection. Not every bond is worth preserving. Not every history is worth repeating. When someone consistently brings confusion, chaos, or pain into your life, you owe it to yourself to reevaluate the access they have. That doesn't mean you become cold or heartless. It means you become discerning. You begin to realize that you don't have to stay accessible just because you have history. You don't have to explain your growth to people who benefit from your stagnation. You don't have to tolerate bad behavior just to keep the peace externally while destroying it internally. Removing access is your way of reclaiming control, of reminding yourself that not all love is meant to be up close, that sometimes love is real, but the relationship is not right. And in those moments, you choose yourself. You choose peace, stillness, and alignment. You choose to stop being a dumping ground for someone else's dysfunction, because you've done the work, you've healed the wounds, and you refuse to reopen them for someone who never even noticed your scars. That's not selfish. That's self-respect in its highest form. When you finally choose peace, you start hearing your own voice again. You start waking up without anxiety. You start going to sleep without overthinking every interaction. That's the reward of removing access to people who made you question yourself constantly. It's not about cutting everyone off. It's about filtering wisely. About asking, does this person bring peace or confusion? and making decisions accordingly. You're not closing your heart, you're closing the doors that left you open to chaos. And that's growth. That's strength. You're learning to be okay with being misunderstood, to walk away without closure, to release people without resentment. You realize that not everyone has the capacity to love you the way you need, and that's not your burden to carry. So you move with grace, you release with love, but you protect your peace with conviction, because nothing is worth sacrificing your mental clarity and emotional balance for. You've given too many chances. You've tolerated too much. And now it's your turn to feel safe in your own life, to feel aligned, to feel free. Not because everything is perfect, but because the energy around you is finally clean, finally peaceful, finally yours. You deserve a life that feels like peace, not performance. A life where your boundaries are respected and your presence is valued. That starts with understanding the difference between love and access. You can love someone deeply and still realize they're not healthy for your environment. You can wish them well and still choose not to let them back in. That's not cruelty, it's clarity. It's knowing that your healing is not up for negotiation, that your energy is not up for grabs. You remove access not to punish, but to preserve your spirit. Because every time you keep someone close who drains you, you send a message to yourself that you don't matter. But you do. You matter enough to choose silence over conflict, stillness over stress, distance over dysfunction. This is what protecting your peace looks like in real time. It's hard, it's uncomfortable, but it's worth it. Because once you experience real peace, you'll never let chaos back in without a fight. You'll never apologize for choosing you again. Because now you know your peace is power. And anyone who truly loves you will never ask you to compromise it. Train your presence to speak before your words do, because long before you open your mouth, people have already formed opinions. They've assessed your energy, your posture, your expression, the way you walk into a room, and even how you sit in silence. Presence is silent communication that shouts louder than any voice. It tells people whether you respect yourself, whether you're confident or unsure, grounded or nervous. We live in a world that's obsessed with words, what to say, how to say it, when to say it, but we forget that people don't just hear us, they feel us. Presence is the aura you carry, the tone you set before any conversation begins. It's what you radiate when you enter a room or meet someone for the first time. You don't have to be loud to be powerful, you just have to be aligned. When your spirit, mind, and body are in sync, you command attention effortlessly. When you train your presence, you walk with intention. You move with certainty. You engage with clarity. Presence isn't about arrogance. It's about quiet strength. It's about communicating self-worth before anyone else assigns you a value. And in many cases, that's far more impactful than a perfect speech. Training your presence begins with becoming conscious of how you show up. Are you walking into a room with your head held low, shoulders hunched, eyes darting away from others? Or are you grounded, tall, with your attention fixed forward? Presence is embodied confidence, not forced charisma. It's how you carry yourself when no one is watching that shapes how you're perceived when everyone is. Every moment you spend in silence is an opportunity to refine your presence. It's not about perfection, but about alignment. The moment you become aware of how your body communicates, you begin to shape it deliberately. Breathe deeper, slow down, listen more. When you listen with your whole body, people feel heard even before you speak. They sense your calm, your attention, your patience, and that builds trust before you even say a word. Presence is not loud or dramatic. It's steady, focused, and deeply intentional. The most powerful people in the room are often the ones saying the least but radiating the most. That's not magic. It's discipline. Training your presence is about mastering how to respond, not just react. It's about creating inner stillness so that nothing external can shake your internal foundation. People don't remember every word you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And that feeling is tied directly to your presence. Your presence is either calming or chaotic, open or guarded, magnetic or repelling. You may say all the right things, but if your presence contradicts your words, people will feel the lie. The greatest communicators are not just articulated, they're congruent. They believe in what they say, and that belief shows in their body language, their tone, their energy. This is why presence matters more than scripts. You can't fake aligned presence. You might fool someone briefly, but over time, your real energy will reveal itself. Training your presence is not about performing, it's about purifying. It's about cleaning up your inner world so that what you show on the outside reflects truth. When you walk into a space with peace, assurance, and self-respect, people pick up on it. You don't need to beg for attention. It finds you because presence is magnetic when it's authentic. It starts from how you treat yourself. When you respect yourself in private, you won't have to demand respect in public. Your presence will do it for you. That's the kind of power you want to cultivate. Presence isn't just what people see, it's what they sense. It's the vibe you bring into every conversation, every encounter. Some people walk in and immediately put others at ease. Others create tension just by stepping into the space. This is not random. It's the result of what's going on internally. If you're anxious, bitter, insecure, or defensive, people will feel it before you speak. Your words might say one thing, but your presence will betray the truth. That's why training your presence isn't about pretending to be calm or confident. It's about becoming calm and confident. You can't fake peace. You can't fake focus. You have to build it from within. You build it by facing your insecurities, quieting your mind, learning to breathe through discomfort, and grounding yourself in values instead of emotions. When you're grounded, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to argue. You don't need to dominate. You just show up fully present, and that alone changes the atmosphere. It turns a room, it turns heads, because people are hungry for presence. Not attention-seeking, ego-driven energy, but real presence. That silent, calm strength that says, I know who I am, and I don't need to perform for approval. People are drawn to presence because it's rare. In a distracted world where most people are mentally scattered, someone who is fully present becomes magnetic. When you're training your presence, you're also training your attention. You're learning to show up with your full mind, heart, and energy. You're not scrolling while talking. You're not rehearsing your next sentence while pretending to listen. You're here now, fully. That alone sets you apart, because most people are absent even when they're physically present. Presence is a gift you give others. And it's one of the most valuable gifts you can offer in this noisy, disconnected world. It says, I see you, I hear you, I'm with you. That kind of presence creates connection. And real connection opens doors, earns trust, builds respect, and leaves lasting impression. When your presence is trained, it doesn't just affect how others perceive you, it shapes how you perceive yourself. You begin to carry yourself differently, expect more from yourself, and hold yourself to a higher emotional standard. Presence becomes a discipline, a habit, a way of life, and eventually it becomes so natural that your silence says everything that needs to be said. Training your presence is not about trying to control how others see you. It's about learning to control your own state. It's about mastering your nervous system, your self-awareness, and your emotional regulation. When you're in control of yourself, you're no longer easily thrown off by external chaos. You become a calm force in a noisy world. That's what real presence is. Self-control turned outward. It shows in your posture, in your stillness, in your ability to remain composed, even when things don't go as planned. People trust that. They lean toward that kind of energy. That's why true presence is power. It doesn't need to speak loudly. It doesn't need to dominate. It just exists. And in doing so, it influences everything around it. But that power doesn't come naturally. It must be built. Every time you meditate instead of panic, breathe instead of lash out, observe instead of judge, you're sharpening your presence. Every quiet moment you give to reflection instead of reaction, you are becoming stronger in silence. This kind of inner training doesn't look dramatic, but over time, it makes you someone others pay attention to before you say a single word. Presence is more than body language. It's your inner world on display. You can stand tall, make eye contact, and use the right hand gestures, but if your spirit is chaotic, people will sense it. That's why presence starts with self-honesty. You can't fake centeredness. You either are or you're not. And people can feel the difference. Presence is the result of doing the inner work, the emotional healing, the forgiveness, the shadow work, the discipline, the intentional solitude. When you do the work, your presence becomes a reflection of peace, not a performance of confidence. You don't have to sell yourself. You simply show up and let your energy speak, and it will. Every room you walk into will feel your arrival. People will respond differently. Opportunities will open, not because you forced your way in, but because your presence made room for you. That's the result of training consistent conscious work on the inside that shines without effort on the outside. And the more you train it, the less you need to explain yourself. Because when your presence speaks first, your words only reinforce the truth that's already been felt. In relationships and business and leadership, presence is your silent authority. It tells people who you are before you tell them what you do. A trained presence communicates clarity, self-respect, and trustworthiness. It lets others know they can feel safe around you, seen around you, respected around you. That's the foundation of influence, not manipulation, not force, just presence. If your presence is nervous, people won't feel secure. If your presence is overbearing, people will feel pressured. If your presence is absent, people won't feel valued. That's why this work matters. Because whether you realize it or not, your energy is shaping your results. If you walk into interviews, dates, meetings, or stages with untrained presence, you risk disconnecting without even speaking. But when your presence is trained, you don't need to overexert. Your groundedness creates its own gravity. People lean in, people remember, people respond, not because you tried to impress them, but because you were fully there with attention, intention, and inner alignment. That's what changes lives. That's what moves people. And that's what sets you apart in a world full of noise and performance. Presence is power, but only when it's rooted in truth. That's why it must be trained. You don't just wake up one day with a magnetic presence. It's a result of daily habits, consistent reflection, and intentional practice. How do you start? By paying attention to how you carry yourself in silence, how you react under pressure, how you sit when you're alone, how you breathe when anxiety rises. Presence training happens in the smallest moments. It's in how you greet someone, how you maintain eye contact, how you listen with your whole body. It's in the way you ground your energy before entering a difficult conversation. All of this is training. All of it counts. And over time, those small moments compound into something unshakable. You begin to move through life, not just speaking with power, but existing in it. That's when presence becomes second nature. That's when you stop trying to prove yourself and start trusting that who you are when aligned is already enough. Because when your presence is trained, your silence becomes a statement, your stillness becomes a signal, and your energy speaks long before your words do. When you walk into a room, your presence arrives before your mouth opens. That's why training it is non-negotiable. It's not about impressing people. It's about respecting the power of energy. Your energy is either chaotic or clear, frantic or focused. You train it by learning to regulate your emotions, slow your thinking, and align your actions with your values. People can tell when your energy is solid. It makes them feel safe, inspired, drawn in. They may not know why, but they'll feel it. That's presence. It's the unsaid language of influence. The more you sharpen it, the more doors you walk through effortlessly. Not because you forced them open, but because you became someone who naturally fits in the spaces you were meant to occupy. When you build presence, your reputation grows on its own. People talk about how you made them feel, not just what you said. That's legacy. And that's why the most powerful voice you'll ever have doesn't start in your throat, it starts in your spirit. So train it, shape it, honor it. Because when your presence speaks before your words, the world listens more closely when you finally do speak. In life, people will often judge you long before you utter a single word. That's the reality of the world we live in. Your energy walks into the room before you do, and what you radiate, whether it's confidence, insecurity, fear, or strength, becomes your first language. That's why training your presence is not just about posture or eye contact. It's about shaping the inner strength and clarity that shine through your silence. It's about commanding respect without needing to demand it. When you understand this truth, You stop waiting for the perfect speech or the right timing. Instead, you begin to realize that how you show up often matters more than what you say. It's the nonverbal truth that people read, and it tells them more about you than words ever could. Presence is deeply rooted in how well you know yourself. If your mind is scattered and your self-worth is dependent on others' opinions, your presence becomes chaotic. But when you are grounded in self-awareness, when you know your value, when you walk with conviction and inner peace, your presence becomes powerful. That power isn't loud or arrogant. It's quiet, undeniable, and deeply felt. People stop and pay attention. They might not even understand why, but they feel something different about you. You move with purpose. You hold yourself with grace. You create space for your voice to carry weight even before it's spoken. And that's where real influence begins. Not in the noise, but in the calm certainty of who you are. The truth is, the world doesn't owe you its attention. You must earn it, not by begging or proving, but by becoming someone who naturally commands it. You must become someone whose energy speaks clearly, confidently, and unapologetically. When you walk into a room, let your presence tell your story. Let it whisper that you are not here to please, perform, or chase approval. Let it declare that you are rooted, focused, and intentional. Because when your presence is strong, people listen before you even open your mouth. And when you finally speak, your words don't need to fight for space. They flow into a room already silenced by your being. This kind of presence isn't about physical appearance. It's about how aligned your energy is with your truth. You don't have to try hard to impress. You just have to show up as your highest self. Calm, conscious, and collected. In a world that often rewards loud voices of fast talkers, it's easy to forget the power of presence. But remember, presence is a language only the heart can interpret. And when your presence is deeply authentic, it cuts through the noise and reaches people in a way words never could. Let your stillness carry weight. Let your confidence be felt. Let your energy be your introduction. Because the moment you realize that your presence is your first impression, you stop wasting time trying to be seen and start becoming someone who cannot be ignored. Speak with your life, speak with your being, and speak with the power that comes from knowing exactly who you are. Thank you for listening. Stay strong, walk tall, and God bless you.